Rookies are breaking out right in front of our eyes. We rank the 2023 class for the second half of the season tonight on the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast. So pull up a chair and enjoy the program.
Cause I've been in tune, out of touch, coming off the bench, trying to shake the funk, check your stat line, see who's up, that over under hit too clutch.
And I'm trying to avoid getting carried away with the jet sweep, sleeping on a trick play, predicting all of my moves like they seen every play. And so I'm running it back, head down, get out of my way. And it's for the law with only one thing to do. I guess I'll say a prayer and put it all on the line for you. What they don't know, something they haven't seen. I find a gap off the screen and hit them right in between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it.
Just one thing to say, yeah, what they don't know, something they haven't seen. I'm off that mean Joe Green, it got me fading between. Yeah, I got it, and I got it. The In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is October 24th, 2023. And yes, the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast still kicking it with you as we approach the halfway point of the fantasy football season. My name is Seth Woolcock, and I might be the luckiest person on the planet tonight because I am joined by a great cast of characters. My co-host, a man who spends more time in the spreadsheet than Bill Gates himself, an award-nominated fantasy football analyst, and maybe the biggest degenerate at the Washington Huskies game a couple weeks ago, storming the field as they beat the Ducks. How are we doing, Scott?
I cannot complain. The Huskies won a tough one this week. Classic trap game against an inferior opponent. Seahawks won. The Astros got booted from the playoffs, and the 49ers lost. It was basically it was the quadfecta sports-wise for me this weekend.
There we go, man. And guys, tonight we are also delighted to be welcomed by one of the faces of football, guys, a dude who's hiked thousands and thousands of miles in the Colorado desert, and a guy whose wife's pies are just taking over the internet continually. He's Dave Kluge. What's up, Dave?
Not too much. Thanks for having me, Seth. Scott, nice to be on with you tonight. Excited to talk some football. I know we're doing some rookies today. I'm all warmed up. We talked about rookies a bunch on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show this morning with Alfredo Brown and Daniel Harms. I feel like those are the guys that can really kind of swing the late season for you. You know, these guys take some time to warm up, but definitely guys that we should be talking about at the midway point, especially as these guys are coming out of buys. That's when we see them start to put it together. So really excited for tonight's show.
Yeah, excited for you to be here with us, Dave, as well. And if you guys are listening to the show regularly, we've talked about a lot of these players we're going to talk about tonight as we re-rank this 2023 class. But I think now we can look a little holistically towards the end of the season rather than going week by week, matchup by matchup. So I'm excited to jump into that, especially going to be looking forward to In the Scope tonight. We got just really want to save people some fab, I feel like, here down the stretch, Scott. I am kind of emptied the bank in a lot of my leagues. I know we're in a couple leagues together, and I think you're in the same boat. So we're going to be looking ahead past the traditional waiver wire targets tonight. And then from the forum, we're going to take your questions at the end of the show. So put those in there as well, and we'll get to those. Also joined in the back end by the man behind the chair, making us sound crispy and shit. What's up, Kyle Scott? How we doing back there?
I'm doing fantastic. We're out here enjoying the last bit of good weather, probably for the year. So we're all making it count out here in the burg. I don't know about you guys, but everyone is out in the parks. Everyone is out walking their dogs. It's a good time. It's outside.
A little late summer here, honestly, in the East Coast. So I'm excited for that. Thank you for the IBT family joining us tonight. We are so grateful for you guys' support. We got Albert in the chat. What's up, Albert? We got Stacy. What's going on, Stacy? And then we got Priceless Pigeon over there on Twitch. Hey, keep with us, and we'll get to your questions here a little bit later in the show here, Priceless Pigeon. But yeah, guys, tell us what's new with your fantasy football team, what's new in life, and we'll make sure we can help you out tonight. Make sure you're interacting with our community, and let's have some fun and dive into some Rave rookie reviews. All right, guys, we are in Rave Rookie Reviews. We're going to be talking about rookies for the rest of the season. As Dave kind of alluded to earlier in the show, these are the players who can really make or break your season down the line. So, Dave, let's start with you, man. 101 of rookies. Obviously, the consensus was Bijan Robinson coming into the season, a first-round pick in most drafts. Is he still there for you?
No, and that's why I took 101 because I wanted to talk about this a little bit. I am going with Puka Nacua, Pook Nukem, whatever you want to call him here. I mean, he has been off to such an insane start to his season, to his career. He's had more receiving yards in his first 7 games than anybody besides Jamar Chase. So right now, if we're looking at rest of season 2023 rankings, I'm going with Puka Nacua ahead of Bijan Robinson. Maybe if we're talking dynasty, then you can twist my arm and make a case for Bijan. But as is right now, what we're looking at, I think Puka Nacua is the most valuable rookie for the rest of this year.
Wow. If you had to look just at all the players that you could redraft right now, Dave, is he a first-round pick for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's probably in that same tier of wide receivers that's going at the back end of round 1. I think you're taking him ahead of CeeDee Lamb. You're probably taking him right around the same place that you're taking A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of people were concerned. I was one of them when Cooper Kupp came back that he would see his target share dip a little bit. He's actually increased his target share in games that Cooper Kupp has been there, and he is out-targeting Cooper Kupp 30-28 in the 3 games that they have played together. So somehow we thought that he was just going to disappear, and he has only gotten better as the season has progressed. So really, really tough to write off what Puka Nacua has been doing through these first 7 weeks.
I love it. Scott, you're up here at number 2. Where are you going?
Well, probably a little bit of a chalky pick now that, Nacua was the surprise at number 1. And I tend to agree with Dave on that. Specifically talking about from right now forward in redraft. I honestly don't think it's close. I think Puka Nacua is.
Wow.
Just as far as what he's doing, Bijan is, he's right around the back end of the RB1s. I think I'm guilty. So I'm Bijan Robinson. Sorry. That's who I'm taking at number 2 before I start talking about him. I made a comment the other day on Twitter that, I need more from Gibbs and Bijan. And somebody said, well, Bijan's he's an RB1 right now, but it just doesn't feel like it's been what we expected. You know what I mean? Because it really hasn't. And again, trying to ignore what happened in week 7 with they basically marked him questionable with 2 minutes left in the game. They're like, oh, by the way, he's questionable, so everybody just had him in their lineups for 3 yards. So I'm ignoring that. I still think he will lead this backfield down the stretch. And if that does end up happening, he may have a higher ceiling than Puka Nacua, but Nacua, it's what he's already done and what he continues to do. That if this was just after week 1, then it might be like, well, Nacua draft capital when Kupp comes back, but it has been sustained. So Nacua 1, Bijan 2 for me.
Okay. And I think you're 100% on the mark there, Scott. It hasn't been like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire rookie season where he's just a total bust for what you paid, but it's a little disappointing. It's not a Zeke rookie year. It's not a Saquon Barkley rookie year. But maybe with my 3rd overall pick, maybe it's someone who could have that type of season if he gets healthy. And it's going to be Devon Chain here, guys. And it's hard not to want a player connected with the best offense in the league. Number 1 running back as far as points per game scoring. I know that's how you like to judge people, Scott. 25.4 PPR points per game. 7.1 yards before contact. That is a fucking crazy stat. That doesn't feel like a real stat. 12 yards per carry. That's a pretty insane number. I know it's a low sample size here, Dave. It's 30 to 40 rushes is all we got from a Chan. Is he number 3 for you in your rankings?
I've got him at number 4, but it's really splitting hairs between who I would have taken here. Devon Chan, if you're looking for the upside, he's got more upside than arguably anybody. I think his upside is even more than Puka Nacua once you look at the positional value there. Obviously, the concern is when he's going to come back, if he comes back, if he's going to get hurt again, because we've already seen 2 injuries now, and he's a smaller guy. They do get injured a little bit more frequently, but on an efficiency basis, he is currently like the best running back in NFL history. And I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain that, but you said the best offense in the NFL. I'll take it a step further. This is like the best offense we've seen in like the last 25 years. So I absolutely want a piece of that. Devon Achane is tailor-made for this wide zone run scheme that they run in Miami, where he could just get out in space, hit the hole, and just explode for 60, 70, 80 yards. So absolutely like that pick.
All right. And let's go to you with number 4 overall. It looks like it might be your number 3 in your rankings.
Yeah, and it's Sam Laporta. What he's doing right now, again, you got to look at positions a little bit, and the advantage he gives you over other tight ends. He's scoring points right now. He's run 7 targets per game to start his career. Right now, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, and TJ Hawkinson are the only tight ends, not just rookie tight ends, only tight ends that are averaging more targets per game. That's just an insane start to his season, to his career. Obviously you're getting a huge advantage with a guy like Travis Kelce, but I think once you look at that next tier with Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, TJ Hawkinson, that's where Sam Laporta falls. So getting that type of positional advantage is why I'd go with Sam Laporta there.
I love it, man. And it's so crazy to think back just a couple of months ago, Scott, when it wasn't that long ago that Sam Laporta was a tight end 3, 4 in this class. And all of a sudden he could be a top 5 tight end on the season.
Yeah. I mean, I scooped up, like, it was at the start of this year, you kind of had to, me personally, because I wrote a couple articles about tight ends, rookie tight ends. So I did a bunch of research into the hit rate with rookie tight ends, but it was JJ Zacharyson, who I was first listening to, who, he also did those types of studies, but he cautioned not to take that with a little bit of grain of salt, because it's not just in a vacuum if they're a rookie.
Yeah.
It's based on, because they're a rookie, they tend to not get much volume. They tend to not see the field as much, but that was showing to be different with these tight ends. So just the fact that they were rookies, bucking the trend with Laporta, with Kincaid, with Musgrave to a certain extent has been kind of an abnormally high just involvement from the get-go for a rookie tight end. And that's the thing that's abnormal. So yeah, like I said, I scooped him up in a bunch of redraft leagues. You know what I mean? Which typically I'm not doing that with rookie tight ends. So I like it. All
right. And let's go ahead to you, Scott. My bad, guys. We kind of backed out of the draft there. I'll get that back up for us. Scott, who do you have here at number 5?
This is where it gets a little interesting. This could be a little bit of recency bias, but this is based on a wide receiver who I really liked coming in to begin with, even when he was sharing the field with the best wide receiver in the league. Now he is not sharing the field with the best wide receiver in the league, and that's Jordan Addison. Just had a monster game in week 7. I think the concerns that KJ Osborne's going to be involved, but Addison is the wide receiver one for that team until further notice. And like I said, I was high on him. So, now that situation is meeting the talent for me, pretty easy pick for me here.
I think that's the right pick. I think Achane, Laporta, and Addison are all kind of in the same tier. I think you're splitting hairs between any 3 of those, but yeah, I think Addison's the pretty obvious one there.
And I think Zay Flowers probably has to go next, guys. Maybe he doesn't have the upside of Jordan Addison, but so solid. The consistency's been there, averaging almost 8 targets per game still, double-digit points in 6 of 7 games. I think he has the most value of anyone left here. I don't necessarily love this Todd Monken offense still, but I think there could be some upside. So I'm interested in giving me a little Zay Flowers there. Dave, back to you.
Real quickly, I just want to say over the last 3 weeks, it looks like Todd Monken's offense is starting to take shape a little bit. Lamar Jackson's seen his intended air yards per pass attempt almost double over the last 3 weeks. They're passing the ball more. So I was kind of the same way. I was a little upset about the way that Todd Monken offense looked to start the season, but it is looking a little bit better now. But I will go with... This is tough. I'm kind of torn between 2 guys, but I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. And I think the reason for Jahmyr Gibbs, I think David Montgomery is the clear-cut RB1 here when he's healthy, as we've seen, but injuries do happen, and I think the contingent upside for Jahmyr Gibbs is just so high. We've got to see the best of both worlds now. When they were trailing against it, or when they were leading against Atlanta, he got 17 carries and got that sort of workhorse role. And then last week, when they were trailing against Baltimore, he got 10 targets. So if David Montgomery does miss any time, Jahmyr Gibbs isn't coming off the field, and he's shown that he can provide really, really good fantasy value as a workhorse running back in Detroit. So, there's a few other guys that I like here, but I think Gibbs is probably the best pick.
It's crazy to kind of see where Gibbs has fallen here as well. There was so much hype coming into the season, and I'm with you, Dave. I think if he got the role that we saw here in week 7, he could be that premier back who's potentially winning you the league. But we know what the Lions think of Dave Montgomery, and he'll be the lead guy when he gets back. Scott, back to you here. I think we're at the 108.
108. Okay, so this pick would have been different a week ago. You got to warn against recency bias, but sometimes the recency bias is just the first bit of a trend that looks like it's going to stick. And I'm going to go with, many people's tight end 1 coming in, Dalton Kincaid, the Bills. Like I said, a week ago, I would have been hesitant here, but he just had 8 targets. Dawson Knox is getting surgery. I think he caught all of his targets for 75 yards. I mean, I think his opportunity, his second half breakout is primed and ready at this point. And it was just, the talent's there. You just hadn't really seen it consistently like you had with Laporta. And again, small sample size, 1 game, but I mean, it's hard once you get to this point of the season to ignore 8 catches on 8 targets for 75 yards for a rookie tight end. It's just like it just stands out. And smacks in the face. It does. So that's who I'm going with at 8.
Slaps you like a big old meat stick, baby. That's for sure. All right, I think I'm going to go a little against consensus here, but I'm going to go Rashee Rice. I think, to me, he just looks every bit as advertised this season. Every time he gets the ball in his hand, it is explosiveness, and it's not close anymore compared to him and the rest of the Chiefs wide receivers as far as production, targets, receptions, red zone targets, TDs. He leads them all in those categories, and I think they just have to get him on the field more. That's the one thing that I think is holding maybe me back, because obviously the other pick probably here is maybe JSN, people would argue. But I just think Rice has this role locked up. Dave, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about Rashee Rice at the 8 slot or the 9 slot here?
Yeah, he's been my number 1 waiver wire pickup that we've talked about for the last 3 weeks now on our show. He was my start of the week last week. I mean, the opportunity is growing, and that's what we like to see. On a per route run basis, there are only 4 wide receivers that are averaging more targets, and it's Deontay Johnson, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then Rashee Rice is 5th on that list. Now, we've seen the routes run go up, and we've seen the snaps go up for 3 consecutive weeks. Over those 3 weeks, he has been number 2 in targets behind only Travis Kelce. We wanted it with Sky Moore, and it didn't happen. We wanted it with Kadarius Toney, and it didn't happen. I think Rashee Rice is that guy that's finally going to step up and be the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs that we've been waiting for so long.
What's the ceiling in redraft this year? What do you think by the end of the season we're ranking him on a weekly basis?
I mean, if he can continue to pull targets at this rate and become a full-time player in this offense, I mean, that's just the perfect storm.
Yeah.
We're looking at a high-powered offense on a player that's very efficient, that's able to draw targets, that can do things after the catch, and that gets a lot of targets near the red zone. So realistically, we're looking at a top 10 upside here.
Man, I love it. Scott, we've been talking Rashee Rice up for what seems like months on the show.
Yeah, no, I mean, he fits the bill of he has the upside and ceiling of a league winner. You know what I mean? Somebody you can still get off waivers in week 8. He wasn't as highly touted as some of the other rookie wide receivers, but I mean, you can go back to any season, and if you look at how it looked as the NFL draft happened, as we all projected what these rookies were going to do, we ranked them, and then the season plays out, and you see what actually happens. There's always this pivoting of different players, and Rice is one of them. Everybody loved his landing spot. He started off the season, he kind of worked his way up to playing time, his snap share, his route percentage, his route participation. Didn't start off very strong, but I mean, not surprising as a rookie. And I mean, along with his targets per route run, I mean, it's not as big of a sample size as some, but I believe he leads the NFL in yards per route run as well. So, I mean, he's highly efficient. He seems to score a touchdown every week.
Yeah.
And so it just, none of the other wide receivers have stepped up, and I don't see any reason why they would at this point. So, I mean, we've seen what a talented wide receiver can do alongside Kelce. I mean, he's no Tyreek Hill. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, the opportunity in this offense with Kelce, Kelce draws so much attention. And then they have a decent running back. They have a running back people have to worry about, because if you're not paying attention, Isaiah Pacheco will run through you, So
And so will Rice, like we saw just last week. He's able to run through defenders as well.
Well, and I was reading something that they're setting him up for success too. They're throwing him into yak. They're throwing him into yards after the catch. So yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys I drafted in one of my dynasty leagues. I drafted pretty late in the first round. Just I tried to trade him like, oh hey, this guy Rice. I kept him, and I'm really glad I did.
100% with you, Dave. We're towards the end of the first round here, 10th, 11th, 12th, kind of the back end. What would be a first round of rookie drafts and redraft here? Where are we going?
I want to throw a wrench in here and go with CJ Stroud. And it might be a little bit early for a quarterback, but he is the clear quarterback one of this draft class. He has looked great so far. Currently the QB 11 in per game scoring, and he's doing this to start his career. And he doesn't have a ton of great weapons around him either. He is elevating the talent around him. I mean, we've talked about Nico Collins being a breakout player for the last 2 years and haven't seen anybody able to unleash him. Yeah. And now here's CJ Stroud is turning him into a wide receiver one. He's elevating Tank Dell. He's bringing Robert Woods back to life. He's peppering Dalton Schultz with the same type of targets that he was getting in Dallas. So I really like CJ Stroud here. He's been giving low-end QB1 numbers, but he's got that weekly upside any given week where he can be, a top 3, a top 5 quarterback. And I think a big surprise here is the identity of the Houston Texans. We thought this was going to be a smash mouth team. We thought that they were going to control the trenches. We thought that they were going to be hard hitting on defense. It's been the exact opposite. The defense has sucked. The running backs can't really find much room, and it has been the CJ Stroud show seemingly every week. So yeah, I'm happy to take CJ Stroud here as the first quarterback off the board.
Shout out Bobby Slowick, man. That guy can coach his ass off.
Well, I just finished up my DST. I'm immersed in DST stuff now with Rotoballer, but with my ranking system, opponent adjusted rankings, the toughest matchup for opposing DSTs, the offense you do not want to play, is Houston. They are the number. They are the number. Just in the way I score it, they're ahead of San Francisco. They're ahead of Kansas City. They're ahead of Miami.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Stroud's only thrown 1 interception on the year, right? Through 6 starts.
Well, that's the thing. It's not always about points scored. It's about not turning the ball over.
And they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the pick. I like the pick, Dave. I'm right there with you. Scott, where do you here at 11?
Okay. So this pick makes me happy. This past week made me happy. I'm happy because according to the chat for this pod, I'm going to get a hug from Joey Wright. I would go Josh Downs here. I think he was a wide receiver that I don't think should have slipped where he did in the NFL draft. He's another one of those wide receivers who out the gate was, 80-90% snap share, right alongside Michael Pittman. And whether it's been Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew, he's been involved. His target share has been solid. His, targets per route run, his volume, his production. And then this past week, it just topped off with one of those games, just 5 catches, 125 and a touchdown. For some reason, that's the way that looks in the box score is just like, all right, this guy's here. And he's a guy I hyped before the NFL draft, after the NFL draft, and since. So I'm taking him here. I take him ahead of JSN at this point. JSN, he was involved this past week, but he just I don't know about his second half if all 3 of those wide receivers are playing. I just don't know how much of a ceiling he's going to have. So
that's what we talked about today.
That's why I'm going Downs over him, because he's their wide receiver too. No questions asked every week.
I'll wait till we get to JSN, but I got a few things to say about him.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was honestly looking at my ranks before the show. I thought I was going to have JSN here, but now hearing this a little bit, I'm going to throw a wrench into things. I'm going to go Tyjae Spears just for the upside here. Listen, this guy, he doesn't give a fuck about ACLs. He's going to go out there and put his best on. I've loved, he doesn't have quite standalone value yet. It's close. It's borderline. Close. If you need a desperation RB2 in a week, he could be that. But regardless, there's a trade deadline in a week, and we don't know what happens to Derrick Henry. And I want that lottery ticket. And fuck the ACLs, man. I'm in with Tyjae Spears.
I like it. That's who I was hoping to get here.
Tyjae Spears everywhere.
Same.
I have him everywhere.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, man. I'm going to hold on to the lottery ticket. Dave, back to you here at pick number 13.
All right, I guess I'll eat it. I mean, who thought that, when the season kicked off, that we'd be sitting here like upset to take Jackson Smith-Njigba at 13th in a rookie draft? But
Yeah, man.
we just haven't really seen it so far. And I think the big concern is, like, we know Seattle runs a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. That's what Shane Waldron likes to do. But unfortunately, Jackson Smith-Njigba is almost always the third read in these passing plays. And when you're looking at DK Metcalf and you're looking at Tyler Lockett, one of them is assured to be open. So the ball just isn't getting JSN's way all that much. I mean, really what you're looking at with JSN is the hope, not that you ever want to hope for injuries, but if DK Metcalf goes down, if Tyler Lockett goes down, then suddenly there's an opportunity for JSN to be a viable fantasy asset. But as long as those two are healthy, there's not going to be a lot left on the bone for JSN. But not crazy about the pick here, but also he's a very talented player, probably the most talented guy to come into this draft class, #1 receiver drafted. We know about the prolific college career and all that. The one saving grace I think that we can kind of say with JSN, he didn't play last year, like sat out the entire year in college. Then he had a preseason wrist injury. So this slow ramp up could just be a product of him not playing meaningful football since, the 2021 season. That's kind of the silver lining here, is that maybe he can put it together even without injuries to Metcalf or Lockett. But, based on the production we've seen so far, you don't feel too great about JSN.
Yeah, it was just nice to finally see him get some targets beyond two yards from the line of scrimmage.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like that's what he did in college. Like he was a great downfield receiver. And then they're just like, no, you just stay behind the line of scrimmage and we'll get you screens.
Scott, over to you.
Yeah, so now we're kind of at the tail end of like rookies who you're starting right now. You know what I mean? Like we're getting into the gray area. So it's between a running back and a wide receiver for me here. The running back, lots of hype, could possibly be one of the co-hosts tonight favorite team. But I'm going to go with Tank Dell. I'm going to go with Nathaniel Tank Dell here. He's been missing some time with some injuries, but he's another beneficiary of the surprisingly effective and, potent Houston Texans offense. It kind of, for a while there, it was either a Tank Dell game or a Nico Collins, another guy that's like, okay, all of a sudden he's good. And I know Kluge has talked up Nico Collins plenty in the past, so that must feel pretty good. But Tank Dell's, he's just another guy. He's another guy that when healthy, especially if you got like 3 wide receiver slots or a couple flexes, he's a guy you're considering starting right now because he's shown it. So I'm going Nathaniel Tank Dell.
Yeah, that was my pick as well, Scott. I'm going to go Jaden Reed. And I will say, pie on my face, I have a lot of Green Bay Packers futures tickets out there that are not going to cash. I thought this was going to be a much better defense than it is. It hasn't been, but I think that might give us a little bit of room here down the stretch that Jaden Reed is going to have to be featured more on this offense. It hasn't been great lately. He got lucky, bailed out with the touchdown here off the hands of Romeo Doubs in week 7. But kind of looking at what the rest of the board has, we saw what the upside could be earlier this season. He had a 2-touchdown game, 7-8 targets a couple times back in a row. So, yeah, I'll get down with a little bit of Jaden Reed here in a second.
I like that one. I'll go with Roschon Johnson. I love this guy coming into the draft. And, we haven't really seen it so far. He's kind of been in Khalil Herbert's shadow. Hasn't really seen the opportunity. The opportunity finally did arise when Khalil Herbert got injured, and then Roschon Johnson hit concussion protocol. So we haven't seen it yet, but what we have seen from this Bears team so far is that they want a 2 running back punch. I mean, it was Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert to start the year. Even last week, Deonta Foreman was the one that got the 3 touchdowns and looked great in fantasy, but he still ceded 12 touches to Darrington Evans, who they just signed off the street. So once Roschon Johnson is healthy, there's going to be a split between Roschon and Foreman. I think Roschon is the better back. I think the Bears coaching staff thinks that Roschon is the better back, and that's why we saw Foreman a healthy scratch for the first 4 weeks of the season. Roschon Johnson, he just does it all. He can break tackles. He can catch passes. He reminds me so much of Javonte Williams. He reminds me of Dameon Pierce, just those angry runners that we really like to see as rookies. So now he's back in practice, hopefully tomorrow. Or actually, I think he was back in practice today. So hopefully he could play this week, and I expect him to immediately leapfrog Deonta Foreman and be the RB1.
Wow. What, Dave, you are still beating the drum. I give you credit, man, because we've been beating this drum for so long, and I feel like I'm starting to wear on it, man. After seeing what Foreman did, you really think it's going to be back to Roschon week 1?
I mean, Foreman looked good last week, and we've seen Foreman look good. But first of all, let me tell you, I'm a huge fan of Deonta Foreman as well. Like all
Yeah,
three of these
dude is
Bears
a
running
stud.
backs, it's not just because they're on the Bears. I was a fan of Khalil Herbert coming into the league, fan of Roschon Johnson coming into the league, and I've loved Deonta Foreman since the Houston Texans drafted him. I mean, coming into the league, I was a
Yeah.
huge fan. So the stars kind of aligned where I got a lot of my favorite running backs on my favorite team, and I like what Foreman brings to the table, but they were forcing him to play so far out of his comfort zone, drawing up screens for him,
Yeah.
getting him outside. He is a between the tackles runner. Roschon Johnson is just so much more versatile. So I think that he will be the guy ahead of Foreman going forward.
All right. All right. Here's a question about what we're talking about right now. Jacoby Myers or Josh Downs rest of season. I would probably still say Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby Myers, if Jimmy Garoppolo can get healthy, is still a top 24 wide receiver. That's what he's been. Love the gold zone targets for him. I think he'll continue to get those no matter who's under center. Hopefully not Brian Hoyer. Dave, your thoughts here, Myers over Downs?
Yeah, easily Jacoby Myers. I mean, this is what we want to see is like these hyper targeted passing trees, and that's exactly what we're seeing in Las Vegas. Every single pass is basically going to Jacoby Myers or Davante Adams. I have to look, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think Jacoby Myers is like 10th or 11th in target share on the league, playing behind Davante Adams. I mean, he's been giving us wide receiver one production, so it's me pretty easily.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Another wide receiver whoopsies for the Patriots.
Would you trade
yet
Derek?
another wide receiver fail? Patriots.
Would you trade Derek Carr for Roschon Johnson, Scott? Russ is his starter, 20-man PPR. Oh, whoa. Oh, all right. This is
That changes the calculus a little bit. Quarterbacks are a little more
change it.
valuable in a 20
I'm
team.
assuming it's one QB because you wouldn't be
yeah
giving up a QB in Superflex. I think it would depend a little bit on what my running back room looks like. I mean, Carr in a 20 team league, you kind of need a backup plan at quarterback. There is not going to be anything on the waiver wire. So I don't know if I'm doing this trade right now, to be honest.
I'm not.
Okay. All right. Let's get back. I think we just had Roschon Johnson go. Scott, it's to you.
Yeah, we're
in the thick of it. Yeah.
We're getting the slim pickings for redraft. So I'm going to go with, hasn't had any spike games yet, but he's also been heavily involved, and that's Luke Musgrave, tight end for the Green Bay Packers.
There you go.
He's also, I believe he's missed a game did he miss a game also with an injury? Anyway, after the first few weeks, if you looked at the rookie leaders in snap, if you just look at snap share, which is really first few games of a rookie season, that's where I start. It's like, okay, who's on the field? That really tells a lot. And Musgrave, Laporta, and Kincaid were all above 50%. And Musgrave stayed there. There's just no competition for him at tight end in Green Bay. And their offense and Jordan Love has been a little inconsistent, Jekyll and Hyde, a little shaky. But at this point, where are we at? The fifth pick in the second round. I think he's a fine pick here. We're running out of players that are actually playing.
Throwing
Jordan
darts,
Love
man.
is killing these guys. He is statistically the worst deep ball passer in the league. And Luke Musgrave and Christian Watson are so good at getting deep, and you see it every single week where they're wide open, like 40 yards downfield, and Jordan Love just misses them by 30 feet. I mean, it is so frustrating to watch.
I wrote this up in my IBT article this week. If you had to guess who had the most receiving yards for the Packers this past week.
Who was it?
AJ Dillon.
Oh my God.
With 34.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's
against the Broncos too. That's like the saddest part I think about it.
Jordan Love really tricked us for those first few weeks. We thought he could have been something.
Yeah, he touchdown heavy those first few weeks.
Yeah, I was 100% with you there. I believed in Jordan Love. I was counting up the receipts early. All right, I'm gonna go with another lottery ticket. It's Amari DiMercado. It's not a sexy pick, but you're getting 2 weeks of usability out of him here, at least before James Conner comes back. 19 touches last week. That's encouraging. And I know he fooled us here a couple weeks ago. We spent all the fab on him. Everyone went after him, and he fooled us and screwed us. But I think the Cardinals now know, for whatever reason, I don't know what told them that, but Keontae Ingram isn't any good. I think DiMercado has a little juice. He showed it at TCU in some big games last year down the stretch in the college football playoffs. I think he'll show it to us again here, at least for 2 weeks before James Conner gets back. And then still a good handcuff and maybe have a little standalone value, maybe.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, like you said, you're getting 2 usable weeks, which is more than you could say about just about anybody else at this point in this draft here. I'll go with Zach Charbonnet, and I almost went Zach Charbonnet over Roshan Johnson for similar reasons.
Wow,
There's no
okay.
standalone value right now, but the contingent upside is absolutely there. The only reason Zach Charbonnet hasn't been producing is because Ken Walker has been so good. I was hoping there'd be some sort of split in this backfield, but it is very much so been the Ken Walker show. But if you look at the efficiency metrics, rushing yards over expectation, breakaway run rate, juke rate, or missed tackle rate, pretty much every single efficiency metric is showing that Zach Charbonnet is looking all of the part of a good NFL running back. He had the target share in college. He had the goal line work in college. He's got the size to be a 3-down back. So really just kind of a lottery ticket. You'd have to see Ken Walker go down for him to really do much of anything.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
if Ken Walker gets hurt, he's a top 12 running back.
All right. I like it. I like Zach Charbonnet there. Scott, over to you. You don't get to take your Seattle guy, but who are you taking? You're muted as well, Scott.
Sorry about that. So at this point where we're at, this is a hoping for a breakout coming up. Somebody that's shown flashes. You just hope that he gets more than 1 or 2 targets a game, and that's Marvin Mims. I'm comfortable taking him. I'm comfortable taking him at this point in the draft, just because there's not a lot of options left that have his type of upside at least. I mean, right now in this point of a rookie draft with our context, I'd be chasing a little bit of lottery ticket upside, and he has that if he's able to find the field more.
Can Jerry Jeudy get traded? I think that's maybe a big question mark. Maybe it could unlock him a little bit. So I don't mind the pick there. What about Michael Mayer? Give us Michael Mayer, Kyle. Put him on the board. This is a guy we highlighted a couple weeks ago, Scott, on In the Scope. It hasn't quite come to fruition yet. Only 2 receptions last week, 13 yards. Did get 4 targets, though. And, to average 10 or 5 targets over the last 2 weeks, that's kind of what you need at tight end. And I think it can get better with Jimmy Garoppolo back. They were starting to feature him. So, yeah, give me a little Michael Mayer.
I'll wrap it up with my last pick. Michael Wilson has shown some flashes here. Again, getting super, super deep in the trenches. It's been nothing but flashes so far, but with Kyler Murray hopefully coming back in the next week or 2, we could see better passing. We could see more passing, and maybe that's what Michael Wilson needs to kind of break out this year.
Awesome. Scott?
I'm last. Okay. Well, at this point, super polarizing player right now amongst a lot of people, but just going for that upside, going for that potential. I'll go ahead and roll with Quentin Johnston here.
Man, how disappointing has this been, Dave, for you to see? I know you might not have been the highest guy on Quentin Johnston. I don't know if any of us really were that high on this program. We knew he was kind of a raw prospect coming out, but to see him just continually not step up, them having to feature Gerald Everett in different ways just to get this offense moving, it's just, I don't know, man. Is it a bust? Can we call it that, or is it too early?
I think it's probably too early to call him a bust. I mean, I do love it for Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett's one of my favorite tight ends in the league. And I'd love to see him just finding ways into relevance every single year somehow. But yeah, man, it's tough. And I didn't really have a super strong take on Quentin Johnston. We knew he was raw. We knew the upside was there. But for me, when I'm drafting, especially best ball teams in the offseason, it's about game theory and stacking. And I really like this Chargers offense. So I found myself drafting a ton of Quentin Johnston, not because I wanted Quentin Johnston, but because I loved Keenan Allen and I loved Justin Herbert. And then Quentin Johnston was just, staring me down the barrel in the 7th and 8th round. So I have a lot of Quentin Johnston in best ball and hoping that it can turn into something, because right now it's just looking like, it's killing my shares.
There we go. All right, we're gonna we're gonna transition out of this, and we're gonna get into some Halloween movie rankings. Real quick, we're gonna go through here. And Scott, I want to start with you, man. You got 3 kids, dude. What are the kids watching? What are you watching? What are you showing them this time of year? Rave rookie reviews. This is kind of our segment to do a little lifestyle, do a little fantasy football rookie talk. So what do you got for us?
Well, just the other night, for the first time, my girls watched Nightmare Before Christmas, one of my favorite. And I mean, you can argue whether it's Halloween or Christmas. It's both. It's both. but just a classic Tim Burton movie, stop motion. I watched, there's this show on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and it's a bunch of behind the scenes of a bunch of these classic movies that barely happened, like almost didn't happen. And this was one of them because of how insane at the time it was, with the available technology at that time to make this movie. But it's a classic. It's just a classic. The music, the songs, the characters, and my girls, there's a little bit of, fear around some of the themes up until recently. And so we gave it a shot the other night and they liked it.
There we go. Beetlejuice, man. I haven't done Beetlejuice. What we got in Beetlejuice, and then what's your last movie there as well?
So Beetlejuice, I can't just brush over it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Again, another Tim Burton. I got a little theme going here, but no, it's one of those movies I grew up on. Nowadays it's the movie that has Moira from Schitt's Creek on it. It's like that actress, very, very young. But it's Michael Keaton. It's crazy, goofy, weird. Really young Alec Baldwin. It's just a classic. It's based on when I was born and what movies were. It's a classic, grew up on it type of movie for me. So my last one.
I just watched Beetlejuice the other day for the first time, Scott. I'd never seen this movie before, and you're probably gonna hate me for saying this, but I didn't realize like Beetlejuice's whole thing is just that he's a pervert. Like that's the whole humor behind Beetlejuice. Like he's just like groping people and making inappropriate jokes. He's just disgusting. Yeah. And I didn't know what I expected, but it definitely wasn't that. But I got to say the scene where they're all lip singing at the table had me in stitches. I was dying. It was a good movie. I was just very taken aback by a lot of the jokes that wouldn't probably fly in 2023.
No, that's the thing. It sprung up when. It's so funny to go back and watch some of those movies and be like, oof, I don't know if you could really say that, because it's true. He is just kind of a disgusting pervert. So my third movie is one I'm not showing my kids anytime soon, but it's one of my favorite, just kind of like, if you want to call it horror, I think,
Never heard of this one at all.
Poltergeist?
Oh,
no.
Yeah,
watch it tonight by yourself. There
have been various renditions of it, but the original is a classic. If you've ever heard, one of the quotes from the movie is "They're here."
Okay,
you've ever heard that? That's from Poltergeist.
Yep. Okay,
and they are ghosts. That's the they, and they're here. So it's one of those, like, I wasn't super into horror movies as a kid and like being scared, but it's one that made it through my screening process apparently, and I just really like it. So.
Hell yeah. All right. Pretty good list there for you, Scott. Dave, can you top it?
I don't know. You tell me. I'll start with E.T. I don't know if people think of E.T. as a Halloween movie, but I think, the best scene from E.T. is on Halloween night when they're going through and they dress E.T. up. So that's what I went with here. I don't know why. That was the first one that popped into my mind. I didn't want to lead the list with it because I don't know if it's technically a Halloween movie. But Scary Movie is another one. Came out when I was a teenager. And one of the funniest movies I had ever seen when it first came out. I'm sure much like Beetlejuice, if you watch it in today's climate in 2023, it probably has a lot of moments. But at the time, I loved Scary Movie. And then topping it all off with Hocus Pocus. I think this is the best movie of all time. My grandma just passed away a few years ago, but she used to be obsessed with this movie. And she was very much so a homebody for the last 15 years of her life or so. Never really left the house or anything. And from the start of October all the way through Halloween, she would just keep this movie on. She had it on VHS and she would just play it on repeat. As soon as it would end, she would just start it right back over again and play the movie for all of October. So I've seen that one front to back hundreds of times throughout my life, and it always gets me in the Halloween spirit.
Have you seen the new one with the same actors?
I haven't. No, I
kind of not.
I have a vendetta against remakes. I'll probably watch it at some point, but I like original ideas, and I don't like when they just kind of remake movies. But the original is so good, I almost don't want to watch the new one because I'm afraid that they'll ruin the original for me.
The reason, I watched the second one because of my two girls, like, because they love Hocus Pocus. And I do too. It's great.
Yeah, it's a great one.
They were like, "Oh, we got to watch the new one." I was like, "Okay." It wasn't bad. I mean,
it was okay. It was okay. I have to say, quick story on Hocus Pocus. I watched it for like maybe the first 10 minutes when I was maybe like 9 or 10. Scared the shit out of me. Like because the opening of that, it's not a soft opening to that movie at all for a kid's movie. So I turned it off after the first 10 minutes. Never watched it again until literally a month ago. And I was like, wow, this is like the nicest, calmest movie I've ever seen about witches.
The opening is an angry mob like chasing the witches through the forest and killing them. Like that's how the movie starts off. Yeah, that is very scary for a little kid.
Yeah.
And then the first little kid gets turned into the cat, and the girl gets just terrible start there. But Hocus Pocus does make my list as well here. Young Frankenstein's also on that list.
Dude, Young Frankenstein is a classic.
This is just like your great successful parodies. I feel like there are so many bad parody movies out there, but Young Frankenstein, Gene Wilder, Mel Brooks and the Boys, 1974, they got it done there. Definitely a good one to check out if you guys haven't. And then I've never shied away from my love for Disney Channel's Halloween Town. Like Scott, have you shown this to your kids? Because it is.
I don't even know what this is.
Oh my, Scott! It is.
I don't know what Halloween Town is. I mean,
Dave, you don't know it either.
I haven't heard of this. No.
Wow. Okay. So probably like late 90s, early 2000s. So I was pretty young when this first came out. But man, like it's just so magical. Like they really like for what they do with the CGI and just the wardrobe and everything. It's awesome. Go check it out, Scott. There's like 4 of them. So put them on for your daughter.
I mean, I think our favorite holiday as a family is Halloween.
Hell yeah.
Like October is, we have a lot more fun decorating our house and getting all Halloweeny and listening to it. We have Halloween mixes, Halloween songs.
We scare the crap out of our neighborhood kids.
Really?
I mean, we go all out on Halloween, like jump scares, like scaring all the kids in the neighborhood. We love it.
Yeah, I mean, my kids have listened to Thriller by Michael Jackson probably more than most kids, just because it's on repeat, on a loop in our Halloween music mix. So yeah, I'm and I mean, Halloween movies are tricky just because, like Dave said, is E.T. a Halloween movie? I looked up, according to the internet, there are lists of here's the top Halloween movies. A Halloween movie is just a movie that's scary in some way. Like that's what made the list. Like pretty much all the like horror movies like Saw, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, obviously the movie called Halloween, but it's basically just scary movies are Halloween movies. So
there we go. Are you guys dressing up at all this year, Dave? You got anything planned with that, Emily?
Yeah, so we do the old my wife, she always we've done the same thing for a few years now. She does this like creepy doll costume where she wears like a doll face and she wears like a short skirt and leggings, and she kind of lures the kids up to the house with a bowl of candy, and then I sit on the porch in a chair with a big mask on with another bowl of candy, and I look like I'm like a stuffed, like, I look like a scarecrow. I put straw coming out of my wrists and everything, straw coming out of my feet, so they don't realize that I'm an actual person. They think that I am just another Halloween decoration, and then when they get up to the house, then I jump out of the chair and scare them. I'm not kidding. We go all out.
Dude, and this is crazy.
Our first year, we weren't sure how the kids were going to react.
Yeah.
The kids run away screaming, and the parents love it. And that's what we were concerned about, is how the parents would react.
Yeah.
The parents laugh. They are so appreciative how much energy we put into it. And I realized, I think this is kind of where I grew up in Chicago. We went all out in Chicago and would really, really scare the kids. I don't know if that's kind of commonplace around the rest of the U.S., but my wife took that out to Colorado with us, took our Chicago roots with us out here, and everyone in the neighborhood seems to really enjoy it.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
So my youngest is going as Princess Zelda.
Nice.
And I'm going as a Bokoblin, which is this guy.
Love
that's
that.
the mask I ordered on Amazon. So I'm going to be Princess Zelda's enemy with that mask on. It's a kid's mask. I'll make it.
There we go.
Love
we go. Love it. All right, guys, let's get to some from the forum and take some questions here.
If you're up, start thinking about what to do. Here in between, we got advice for you. Back and forth all day, trying to pick the play. Let's hear what them boys here had to say. Presented by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
All right, let's get to a couple questions here before we get to the questions from the forum. And a reminder that this segment is powered by the Fantasy Football Advice Network. And this is a great platform for you guys to check out. It's free to join. You can also use the promo code IBT if you want to upgrade your account. And it's something where if you don't want to download Discord, Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, it combines all these platforms into one thing where fantasy football creators, fantasy football enthusiasts can all support each other. So it's a really cool community. You guys should definitely check it out over there at fantasyfootballadvice.com. And let's get some questions here in the chat. First one from Priceless Pigeon. Would you trade Komet and Shaheed for Kittle and Rondale Moore? Another 20-man PPR question. How are we feeling about it initially, Dave?
I'm trying to break this down right now. I think I'd prefer Kittle and Rondale Moore.
I think there's a little bit more value probably on that side. I
think
Kittle.
The gap between Kittle and Komet is a lot wider than the gap between Shaheed and Rondale Moore.
Scott, is that where you are too?
Yeah. And Rondale Moore has the most rushing yards of any wide receiver in the NFL right now.
Cool. Yeah, I like this. I like this deal. That's a cool. Never done a 20-man league, but we might have to get into that next year. I like that. Here's one from Josh. Would you trade Carr for Roschon Johnson and Jonnu 20-man redraft PPR? Russ is starting. All right. So this might have been an add-on from the question we got earlier about Carr from Roschon. Josh switched accounts here on us. How do you feel about it, Scott?
I'm still hesitant. I honestly, I don't have experience in a league with this many teams. But my gut is telling me I don't even though it's not super flex.
Yeah. Don't give up that. Yeah.
If you're in a 10 team league and I got to draft a backup for my quarterback's bye week. It's no, just stream during your quarterback's bye week. There's plenty of quarterbacks available. In this case, if you don't have a backup, during your quarterback's bye week, you might just have an empty roster spot. So I'm probably still keeping Carr. If Roschon Johnson had established himself at this point, it wasn't based on hope, not just hope. There are signs pointing to success, but I'm probably still sticking with Carr.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I just don't know how much Jonnu moves the needle. Tricked us for the first 5 weeks, giving us a tight end, 13, I believe he was.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like there's got to be better options out there for tight end. The deepest league I'm in is an 18-team league, though, and every move you make carries a ton of weight. So I completely understand the plight of being in a league like this. It's not easy.
Here we go on from Cohen. My tight end is Logan Thomas. Should I spend a good amount of fab on Dalton Kincaid? Scott, you had him ranked pretty high. Are you willing to spend up if Logan Thomas is your guy right now?
I think so at this point. Yeah, I think if Dalton Kincaid's available.
Okay.
The reason he came in really, it was between him and Laporta once the season actually got underway. It was really between the two. But a lot of people still had Kincaid higher. They're both on really good offenses, but if he's still available, his upside in this offense now that Dawson Knox it's not that Dawson Knox was really taking a lot, but it's hard when there's another tight end involved. It's not the same as having two wide receivers on the field. So yeah, I would be.
I'd throw upwards of 30% on Kincaid if he's available in the league and you need a tight end. I don't think Logan Thomas is going to be the guy for the rest of the season. Kincaid can hopefully be a plug and play guy.
Love it. Let's get to the question from the forum. Rest of season rankings. Let's get back to this. Brian Robinson Jr. or Javonte Williams? Dave, how are you feeling about it, man? Brian Robinson, really a top 24 guy in most statistics across the league. He has had quite a bit of touchdowns carrying him so far this season, 6. And Javonte Williams finally saw, I wouldn't consider it a breakout game in week 7, but 83 yards, 15 carries, had 4 targets. Are you interested in taking maybe the upside play with Javonte or Brian Robinson, who's been steady Eddie so far?
I think I'm going with Brian Robinson, and he's been a bit game script dependent, but when he has a good matchup that you can lean on him, except, of course, that one matchup against the Bears where everybody thought it was a good matchup and looked at him as a top 8 running back, and he just completely face-planted that week. Javonte Williams, the upside is there, but Jaleel McLaughlin has looked great. Samaje Perine is starting to warm up over the last couple of weeks as well. So for me, we're seeing Antonio Gibson kind of just seeing his workload diminish by the week. I think I'm going to go with Brian Robinson here just because he has a much clearer role in the offense than what Javonte has in this perceived three-headed committee in Denver.
Yeah, it's gross right now there in Denver, Scott. Week 8 snaps, Javonte 53%, P. Ryan 25%, McLaughlin 17%, Michael Burton 20%. Burton's getting
Oh,
even a little bit of look in the passing game. So it feels like it's gross.
I hate
Yeah,
Sean Payton.
I'm still, in my opinion, I'm going Javonte here over
Oh,
Brian Robinson.
wow. You want to
Yeah.
be a part of that?
I mean, a 50% snap share for Javonte Williams just by itself doesn't sound good, but I mean, it was significantly more than the other two backs you mentioned. And he was dealing with a hip. He was dealing with it. Obviously he's coming back from the injury, a more significant injury, but he was dealing with a hip injury. And I think he's just getting healthy. And I thought he looked the part this past week. And I mean, the pull for Brian Robinson is there because, like Dave said, Antonio Gibson is down to about one route a game at this point, maybe. He's not getting any rush attempts. So it's there. But Brian Robinson to me is just kind of, without a touchdown, it's just like, okay, 6-7 fantasy points a week, potentially. I might have a little bit of take lock with Brian Robinson going on myself. I've just never really been a fan. I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of the story, like what he went through to come back from that gunshot wound and play. I'm a fan of that, but I've never really been a fan of the fantasy asset. So I like the upside with Javonte.
Free Antonio Gibson in the chat. Man,
I'm done with Antonio Gibson.
Yes,
I'm not going there again. I'm too tired for it.
We've been recommending him as a cut since week 3. Like, just right now, Chris Rodriguez Jr. has jumped him on the depth chart. That's how bad it is for Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, it has not been kind, man. And maybe we see him get traded, but I'm with Dave on this one. Scott, I think you made a great point for Javonte, but I have to go to Brian Robinson. And we've gone way more in the passing game than I think anyone expected this season from Brian Robinson as well. 14 targets, and he's cashed in 2 of them for touchdowns. So maybe that's going to come back down. Maybe there's a little positive regression the other way, but we'll see. Let's go ahead though, guys. We're going to round out the show tonight with some In the Scope.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the Scope.
All right. So we don't need to spend a ton of time on the mainstream targets. We're going to have our article out tomorrow on this. We already had our early waiver wire targets article out as well. So go over to the In Between Media site, inbetweenmedia.com, and check that out. But I do think we need to spend just a minute before we get to our after waivers run targets and talk about this Rams backfield. Zach Evans wasn't the guy. I think we were all a bit hesitant, at least on this program, to commit to him last week. Guy got beat out in college a couple times. I felt like Darrell Henderson Jr. knew this scheme. I thought it'd be Myles Gaskin, who also maybe stepped up with him, but it was Royce Freeman. So, Dave, how does this shake out for you for fantasy managers? How much fab are you willing to spend on Henderson or Royce Freeman? And looking at Zach Evans from a dynasty lens, is it time to hang up the hat on him as well?
I don't know about for dynasty, but it's definitely not going to happen this year. I mean, he didn't log a single offensive snap last week, which was pretty tough to see. And I'm a big fan of Zach Evans' talent. Like, he looked good in college. He's got juice, but it seems like Sean McVay just hates him, and that's what we're probably going to see for the rest of this year. But we got to remember Kyren Williams also couldn't get on the field last year, and look at what he did this year in year 2. So I'm not ready to say that he's a bust in dynasty, but I wish I had a clear picture on this Rams backfield, and I really don't. I mean, my gut reaction after the game was Darrell Henderson is going to be the guy, and splash all your fab on Darrell Henderson. But then you look at it, Royce Freeman actually had 12 carries to Henderson's 18, and he was much more efficient with those touches, more rushing yards over expectation, more yards per carry. I think what Henderson brings is better pass blocking, and that pass blocking is going to get him extra snaps, and it's going to keep him on the field the same way that Kyren Williams was on the field. But I'm a little bit hesitant to just go spend everything I have on Darrell Henderson right now, because it wouldn't shock me, and I could have egg all over my face by the end of next weekend, but it wouldn't shock me if Royce Freeman sees his role grow a little bit, because he looked better on the eye test, and then if you start looking at the efficiency metrics, he looked better there as well.
Well, there's also some underlying tension, I think, between Darrell Henderson and this Rams coaching staff. I don't know why he was cut in the middle of last season after being the starter for the beginning of it. So
Yep.
some weird shit could happen. So I do like that call of maybe going with the contrarian play of Freeman.
Because
Scott,
he's probably free. Like, you don't have
yeah,
to
yeah,
spend any
yeah,
money on Freeman. Wait till waivers clear and pick him up for free.
yeah, yeah. Scott, if in some of these shallower leagues, if Josh Downs, Rashee Rice, or Dalton Kincaid are out there, how do you rank those three?
Whew, it's a tough one. I mean, it's based somewhat on need. If I need a tight end, Kincaid's number one. I have right now, I mean, when we were doing the rookie draft, when Rashee Rice went, if I were in that spot, I would have taken him or Downs. I have them very close.
Okay.
I think Downs is already pretty much established as, a consistent, at least a consistent volume guy who can score, in the top 12 of wide receivers like he did in week 7. I do think Rashee Rice has a higher ceiling. I'd probably let's go ahead and take the team needs out of it. I'd probably go Rice, Kincaid, Downs.
Okay. That hurt for you to say, I know, because you're a big Downs guy. But let's get to our in the scope candidates. These are the players you can pick up after waivers run. We've been successful this year on this, guys. We got Puka Nacua before week 1. Scott, you had a pretty good call a couple weeks ago. And then last week, Eric was on the show telling us to pick up Devin Singletary. Now, a lot of people are kind of trying to go back to the well on him. Hopefully you got him before the bye week. Dave, let's go to you, man. Who are you feeling as someone who might be a stash, someone you can get for really nothing after waivers run?
Yeah, Pierre Strong right now is available in like 99.6% of leagues, and I don't think that a lot of people are going to be looking at him when they're setting their waivers tonight. But he's a guy that you might be able to pick up for free. In Jerome Ford, they're saying a low-grade, high ankle sprain, which is kind of funny wording. We don't know if he's going to be out a week. We don't know if he's going to be out 4 weeks. We don't even know if he's going to be out 6 weeks. I mean, these high ankle sprains do linger. And I think everybody's gut reaction is, wheels up for Kareem Hunt. But Kareem Hunt looked terrible last year. He hasn't looked good this year. And after Jerome Ford exited the game with his injury last week, Pierre Strong out-touched Kareem Hunt 5-2. So we know this Cleveland Browns coaching staff likes something in Pierre Strong because they traded for him in the preseason. They didn't sign him off waivers. They didn't, just bring him on the practice squad. They actually went out of their way to trade for him. So he's a guy that has a lot of fun metrics and a lot of fun measurables. He's great at catching passes, which we want to see in fantasy running backs. He's great in open space. But really what it comes down to for me is I just don't think Kareem Hunt has it anymore. He hasn't looked good in, 2.5 years at this point. And I think Pierre Strong could be the guy that brings a little bit more juice to this Cleveland backfield.
And he kind of was that guy down the stretch in this game for him, Dave. He was the much more efficient back. I think he actually might have even had more carries in the second half once we did see some people go down in this one. Scott, where are you here on the temperature of this Cleveland backfield?
I tend to agree. Kareem Hunt is going to be the guy that people are going to spend their fab and waiver priority on. And I don't necessarily, he's going to be involved. But I like the idea of getting Pierre Strong for free. I'm kind of a moderate Pierre Strong truther. Anytime I'm feeling down, I just go look at his college statistical profile, conditionally formatted where green means good. And it's just green across the board for this guy. A little bit of a smaller sample size, small school, all that. So, he's not just going to come in and become Saquon Barkley. But he does have the talent. And, this could be finally a situation where he's healthy. And he can actually get some work because he battled injuries in New England and it's never really worked for him, to make his way up the pecking order in that backfield. So I like it. He's a great stash candidate, and the thing about it, if based on his rostership, if it doesn't pan out, Kareem Hunt gets 30 carries. Okay. Yeah. You got him for free.
Right.
Move on. All right, Scott, who do you got for in the scope here? Week number 8.
All right, so this is a player. It's a little bit out of the norm with the discussions we have with these types of players. Somebody that if you have an IR slot like I do in a bunch of leagues, I've already got him in my IR slot, and that's Kyler Murray. He's still only 22% owned, 23% owned ESPN leagues. Think what you want about all the stories, all the off the field stuff with him. To be able to get a quarterback with his potential ceiling at this point in the season for free, it's a risk you got to take. Like, there's got to be some sort of roster clogger at the end of your bench if you don't have an IR spot, that it's worth it to cut bait with them for the potential of Kyler Murray, especially people that lost Anthony Richardson, like me, in like half my leagues.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so I scooped him up everywhere I could. And, you know, he's not coming back this week. They have until November 8th to activate him for this season. But all the talk coming out of Arizona is positive. They want him to play. He wants to play. So I think he does play, you know, and it would be I mean, Josh Dobbs has had some surprisingly effective play, you know, coming to the team 2 minutes before the season started. But Kyler Murray would, you know, he would jack up the fantasy value of Michael Wilson, Marquise Brown, of the new tight end one in Arizona, Trey McBride, and various other people. So yeah, if he's there, grab him now.
It would be a godsend if he could make it back by week 10, because week 10 you got Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford all on bye.
Yeah, that's a tough bye week. Yeah.
Yeah, so if Kyler could make it back by week 10, that would make a lot of people feel better about losing their potential quarterback one.
I don't think I would have been excited about Kyler Murray a couple of weeks ago, but looking at the quarterback landscape right now, I think we have to consider him. So I like the shout out there, Scott. Kyler Murray, he's interesting. The only thing I will say about Kyler Murray, 25% of his points last season came from the rushing production. So I think the ceiling is lower than it has been in the past, but I still think he could be a serviceable low-end quarterback one when he gets back and healthy. I'm going to shout out Chris Rodriguez Jr. here to close us out tonight, guys. This is another kind of shot in the dark. Dave mentioned him a little bit earlier when we were kind of trashing on Antonio Gibson. And really right now, the Commanders, like, I think they are testing him out because they want to trade Antonio Gibson. 4 carries in week 6, 7 in week 7. But the most important thing to me was he had the most red zone touches among all the running backs this last week, too. And that's really what he is, guys. He's a power back, a short yardage back. He's not the most athletic rookie coming into this class. We didn't even have him ranked on our top 24. Like, I don't love the profile necessarily. But Gibson has had 5 red zone touches all season. So I think they're really trying to phase him out of this game, maybe potentially trade him here next week on October 31st, Halloween.
Yeah, this was one of my, I think, remembering back to the start of the season, one of my like deep sleepers was Chris Rodriguez. His rookie profile, his college stats don't jump off the page. You know, he's low draft capital, but he did have, there were, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there were a few metrics that caught my eye. And that was the reason why in this particular backfield, deep sleeper, at that time, in week 1, he could only be a deep sleeper, but he's another guy that, like Pierre Strong potentially could come into some volume. Yeah.
And he's got some awesome highlights. If you go back and watch what he did in college, playing at Kentucky, he was just consistently running through guys. Really, really fun player.
There we go. There we have it, guys. If you have more questions that we haven't got to yet, go ahead and throw those in the YouTube comment of the video, and we'll get to those later this week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Dave, thank you for giving so much of your time tonight, my man. Tell us where we can find you and best support you throughout the remainder of this season and forward.
Yeah, real simple. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's Kluge. I promote pretty much all of my content there, where we're doing the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show 6 days a week on YouTube and on podcasts. So just follow me on Twitter if you like jokes and memes and really dumb humor.
There we go. Well, Dave, thank you very much. Scott, thank you for joining us. Appreciate the IBT family out there. We will see you guys here on Friday. Until then, keep it in between.